Sage Wanderer here, coming at you from my van down by the river. So is Roy Moore a perv? Okay, so I have to say this. Do I believe that the liberal democratic government and politicians and party and even the rhino Republicans don't want somebody like Roy Moore in the government? Yeah, they don't. They don't want him in there, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep him out. Now, is he innocent? Let me tell you this. I think people on the right and the left are standing up together now and joining hands across the country and saying, pedophilia is not okay. No means no. You can't ram your tongue down a woman's throat. You can't grab her on her butt. You can't victimize women. You cannot rape them. You cannot victimize them. You cannot victimize children. It is wrong. And regardless of what side you are on, we are all coming for you. We will not tolerate this any longer in our nation. Sex traffickers, we're coming for you. One way or another. By hook or by crook, your days are numbered. We are sick of it collectively as a nation. And I think from social justice warriors to cowboys, we can all agree on that one thing. Now, is Roy Moore one of the guilty ones? We know what Frankenstein is. We have the pictures. We know Charlie Sheen is. We've got the testimony. You know, we know Hassard did it. He was prosecuted. Okay? And many, many more are coming because victims are finally having the courage to stand up because for the first time, people are believing them because we're sick of it. We've heard too many stories. You know, as a priest, as a minister, I took confessions. And I cannot tell you how many, 80% of the people that when push comes to shove and the nitty gritty and we get down to it, they're victims just like me. They're childhood victims of pedophilia, just like me. Some much, much worse than what I experienced. Many of them, multitudes of them, much, much worse. And we all know the truth, that these vile demons exist in human flesh and that they've been preying upon our children and our women for too long. Even trying to prey upon our men. This is unacceptable. Is Roy Moore one of those people? If he is, put him in prison with the rest of them. I don't care what political party you're from. You're going down. Period. We won't take it. None of us will. Am I right? Can I get an amen? Now, here's the part none of you are going to like. Both sides. None of you that really are cheering me right now for what I just said are not going to like what now I'm going to tell you. That in the 1970s, it was a very different world. In the 1970s, nearly every single woman in America over the age of 20 was married. Even in the late 80s, when I married my wife, she was 27. And everyone, she was afraid that she was going to end up an old maid at 27 because all of her friends have already been married for 7 to 10 years. That my sisters both got married as teenagers. One of them to a much older man, a 32-year-old man. And so a guy that's 32 and single that's never been married, there was no dating pool really until the 80s of women his own age. Every woman his own age was either married or divorced. And let me tell you, if you were a Christian in those days and you married a divorcee, your whole family would reject you and her and any children you had. That's how divorce was hated back then. It was seen as an absolute failure as a human being to get divorced. And a divorcee was considered damaged goods. And if Roy Moore was the kind of righteous man that he appears to be, the kind of man that would fight a fight to keep the Ten Commandments up in his room, up in his courtroom, the kind of man that would use his acceptance speech when he wins the nomination for Senate to be prayer and scripture and sharing of the gospel, that a man like that would never have married a divorcee. he would have married a young, unmarried woman, which means his dating pool was between the age of 16 and 20 years old. Now, how did 32-year-old men date 16-year-old women back then? We're not talking about predatory behavior here. We're talking about courtship, the way it used to be. So if a man that age who'd been to war, or a man that age that had been in the military and was just getting out and now felt ready to start a family, he would look for a woman between the age of 16 and 20 who had never been married, because he wouldn't find a 32-year-old that had never been married. That's just the reality of it. There was no divorce. Divorce was still pretty rare compared to today, where it's just normal. Multiple divorces are normal. Yeah, you wouldn't. Most of us people been divorced wouldn't have been allowed in a church in the 60s and 70s, much less in the pulpit. It's just the way it was. So, how did you date a 16-year-old if you were a 32-year-old? You went to her parents, and you said, "Hey, I met your daughter down at the malt shop while I was getting a burger. I'm 32, I've been in the military, just got out, I started a business, and I'm ready to start a family. And I think she's cute. You did a great job raising her, and I'm interested in courting your daughter for the purposes of marriage. May I?" And they would either say, "No, I want her to have romance and be married to a boy her own age that she meets in high school, like me and her dad did, or like me and her grandma and grandpa did." Okay, whatever the family tradition is, and you said no and you declined, which happened a lot of the times. Or you went, "You know what, you seem like an outstanding citizen. I know who you are in the community, and yes, you may date my daughter. She would be lucky to marry a man like you, and I know you would take great care of her." So, older men marrying young girls, especially men that had not been married. Now, if he was divorced, that was a whole other kettle of fish, and he's liable to get a not just no, but hell no, get out of my house. See, it was a different world. You can't go judging people's actions from 40 years ago on today's current morality or lack thereof. Do I believe that Judge Moore is a pedophile? No, I do not. I believe he was just a man who went down and made that socially acceptable decision at the time. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. If you don't like it, there's the door, But I am not in favor of pedophilia. If he was a pedophile predator, in other words, he tricks families into leaving their minor daughters with him so that he can use them for the purposes of sexual gratification without any desire to marry them or treat them correctly or right, and without their parents' knowledge or permission. That's pedophilia. If they're under the age of 16, to me, that's pedophilia. 15's borderline, and some legal, I think, in some states with parental consent. If the man is over 18, they can get married in some states at 15. I think Missouri and Arkansas may still be that way. I think it's 16 in Texas. So these kind of older men, young girl marriages used to be common. Now it seems like pedophilia, but it really wasn't. And I don't think he's a pedophile. I think he's a righteous man. But he will probably have to resign, because no one will sit through and listen to someone like me who lived in those days and remembers what it's like explain, because they'll just stand and yell Nazi, racist, misogynist, rapo, and they won't listen. And I may get a lot of that in my comment section, but I'm a big boy and I can take it. And I've decided, for all the trolls that don't like me, whenever you curse me, I'm just going to say, "God bless you." And that's the only response you will ever get from me from this day forward. I'm done being clever. If you don't understand the Bible, then you won't know what I'm doing. If you understand the Bible, then you know exactly what I'm doing. So to all the trolls, I say, God bless you. And thanks for listening. Till next time, God save the Republic.